The presenting sponsor of Metrospective is Topps.com and Topps Project 70. Topps is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its very first baseball card design with a new program that pushes boundaries while paying homage to their heritage. Founded in 1938 as a chewing gum company, Topps released their first baseball card set in 1951. Now, 7 decades later, Topps has teamed up with 51 artists and creatives from around the globe to revisit and reimagine 70 years of Topps' most iconic baseball card designs through a year-long program called Project 70. Project 70 has brought together creators of all kinds for this extraordinary set. Graphic designers, tattoo and graffiti artists, animators, illustrators, painters, and even a jeweler make up the artist roster, which includes names like Snoop Dogg, Action Bronson, Bin Baller, and so many more. Each artist will select their own MLB players and Topps designs from any year to craft a unique story. Ever wanted to know what Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle would look like in a 1980s Topps design? Or how about Fernando Tatis Jr., the classic template from the 1950s? Now you can. 3 new cards launch daily all year long on Topps.com and are only available for 70 hours before they're gone for good. While you're there, be on the lookout for special cards. Each card drop includes rainbow foiled editions numbered 1 to 70, randomly inserted into each card's print run, as well as a 1-of-1 gold frame edition given to a lucky purchaser. Exclusive artist-proof editions numbered to 51, featuring a silver frame, are also available for purchase for every card. But hurry, as those sell out shortly after each card is launched. Head to Topps.com to learn more about Project 70 and to check out which cards are live right now.
Hello and welcome to the Metrospective presented by Topps. Check out Topps Project 70 celebrating 70 years of Topps baseball cards. I'm Ted Berg, joined as always by the Athletics Mets beat writer Tim Britton. And Tim, we've got some news that you very much predicted on this show last time we spoke.
Yeah, I mean, I think just about everyone following the Mets predicted, once we heard from Sandy Alderson last week that Luis Rojas was not going to be back as the Mets manager in 2022. Alderson saying last week that, they had to make certain decisions before they hired a president of baseball operations, and that those decisions would be made with the potential hire in mind and maintaining flexibility, I think was the word he used. And when you say that, that's saying like, that means not bringing back the manager. It probably means we have not heard yet, but not bringing back most, if not all, of the coaching staff as well. I think Jeremy Hefner, as the pitching coach, probably has the best chance of staying with the Mets, and even that is not a sure thing at this point. So this was the first domino in the offseason. I think it happened. It happened quickly. It happened on Monday afternoon, the day after the season ended. That's generally the considerate thing to do. You don't want to make these guys sit around and wait for a week or something. The Mets kind of did that last time with Mickey Callaway waiting, I think, until Friday of the week after the season to make the move. So, this is what I think we were all ready for. We can talk about the pros and cons of letting go of Luis Rojas. We can talk about candidates for the manager position. The candidates is tough to go through at this point because we don't know who's making that hire, and that's probably the bigger thing. Like the Mets are going to be managerless for a little while here. It's going to be a longer time than usual without one because they've got to do the hiring above that first.
Right, but I do want to talk a little bit about, I guess you said we can talk about pros and cons. So let's talk a little, I think the pros are pretty obvious, right? The new president of baseball operations, the new GM, get a clean slate with the manager to hire whoever their person is. And that's got to be a pro, right? You want to know that the manager's on the same page as the front office. As you've pointed out several times, like the Rojas himself and Callaway, like there has never really been that sort of like synchronicity between, or at least hasn't been for several years, that the GM having someone we know is his guy as the manager. And so that's an advantage, I think, moving forward. But the con is, It seems like Luis Rojas is a good baseball guy. It seems like the players did like him a lot. It seems like a lot of what went wrong this year wasn't really his fault. There were some questionable tactical decisions, certainly, but every single manager in the majors is guilty of that to some extent. And I guess the Met fan, like, hey, Paul Sewald is a really good pitcher now, and Chris Flexen is the ace of a nearly playoff team. That paranoia for me is like, okay, now Luis Rojas is going to go manage the Padres next year and win 103 games.
Yeah, so the pro, you're right. Like, it's been since the start of 2018, really, that the Mets have had the guy who hired the manager and the manager working together. And that was Alderson and Callaway for just a couple of months before Alderson took a leave of absence because, Brodie Van Wagenen inherited Callaway and let him go after a year. And then you had Alderson inherit Rojas and let him go after a year. So it'll be good to have that proper dynamic of a head baseball executive who hired a manager and works with him. With Rojas, like you said, I don't think the reason he's not coming back as manager is because he didn't intentionally walk Brian De La Cruz or anything like that.
He should have.
I think. Lewin Diaz has been excellent since then, by the way.
He changed a career-changing event for Lewin Diaz.
I think when you look at it, there was really, for the last couple of months, you felt this growing disconnect between how the clubhouse in general viewed itself and its talent and how the front office was talking about it. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to even before the trade deadline. If you remember, like Zach Scott talking about how they'd been a mediocre team for most of the season, and the Mets clubhouse talking about, how much talent there was in the room and how confident they were that they were going to contend not just for the National League East, but for a National League pennant. And as things kind of spiraled on them in August and September, that, Rojas, with his even-keeled demeanor, with his positivity, for the most part, there were times where he was harsher on them, wasn't able to steer them out of that skid. The players really liked him. There are times when the players and a manager get along too well, and that, if the front office certainly views this core group of position players as one that hasn't had the results that you're looking for from a core group, and they're thinking about shaking it up. And I think Rojas is a guy who thinks that core group is good enough. He knows them very well from his time in the minor leagues. And maybe they want more of an outside perspective, a guy who hasn't come up with these guys the same way as Luis Rojas has. I'll say this, I was doing the counting yesterday, because I've covered baseball for 13 years, if you count my 2 years as an intern for MLB.com, one with the Mets, one with the Yankees, and I've been a beat writer for 11, and I've covered 10 different managers, and Luis was probably the easiest and nicest to deal with as a reporter. He was just really approachable, really personable, like you could talk to him about a lot of different things. And that's pretty remarkable considering the circumstances, in that, like, we couldn't talk to him in person for a very long period, for the majority of his tenure. And so he was, from that perspective, it's tough to see him move on because I liked him a lot as a person. And I do wish him the best. And like you mentioned, the Sewald and Flexen thing, I think that concern is legitimate, because, you think about, like, why is Chris Flexen good now when he was never good with the Mets? And you think that, well, the Mets didn't give him the proper chance to succeed. Chris Flexen wasn't good as a Met because he was making emergency spot starts with little notice and not on normal rest, because he was being shifted back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen, because they'd call him up and then he'd sit for 9 days and they'd be like, okay, go out, throw the 17th inning of this game and close it down. Like, that's not giving the guy the best chance to succeed at the major league level. And now in Seattle, he is pitching like a normal pitcher. Like, he's gotten that chance. And you look at Rojas, and the Mets did not give him the best chance to succeed as a manager. He was here for 220 games, and he worked with 4 different general managers, one of whom he never even met in person, in Jared Porter. He had to adapt to a lot of weird circumstances. And so there's a lot there that you say, like, give this guy the proper context to be a manager, and he's probably got a better chance of success than he had in New York. That doesn't mean you hold on to him just because of that. And we'll see if he stays within the organization. The Mets have given him that opportunity. I think there's a chance. This is a guy who's been with the Mets since 2007, and feels really connected to the organization. One of the things he mentioned a few weeks ago when I was talking to him was how much he dislikes the "that's so Mets" idea, and how he takes that personally in a way that I've never really heard anyone else with the Mets say that before. So he does have, I think, loyalty to the organization, but this is all, they're also essentially firing him. And if there's another organization that wants to give him a job on a major league coaching staff or something like that, I'm reasonably sure that he would opt for that instead. So I think you see both sides of it here, but I think this was a move because you were bringing in a new head baseball executive that makes it simpler to do. If they were, if they had a president of baseball ops and they were keeping that guy, then it would have been a little trickier. We would have gone deeper, I think, into the pros and cons of this. But I think because you were bringing someone new, it makes sense to kind of start fresh.
Look, no one's perfect. Even the best baseball players strike out with the bases loaded. The best golfers sometimes three-putt with the tournament on the line. So if you feel like you come up short in the bedroom, it's perfectly okay. But if it's bothering you, there are options. Go to GetRoman.com/Mets, METS now. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A U.S. licensed healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, it ships to you free with 2-day shipping. Take care of your ED without leaving home. Complete an online visit today to connect with a U.S. licensed healthcare professional and take care of it. Go to GetRoman.com/Mets now to get $15 off your first month. Look, there's a straightforward way to take care of your ED, and that's by going to GetRoman.com/Mets. Get started now to save $15 on your first month of treatment. It's fall, which means football season is in full swing, and for many of us, there's no better way to enjoy the games than by having some skin in the game, which is why BetMGM remains the exclusive betting partner of The Athletic. And as a fan of The Athletic, you can bet $10 to win $150 plus a free 3-month subscription or extension to your subscription with The Athletic when you bet with BetMGM using our promo code. Just sign up at BetMGM.com and use the promo code TheAthleticPod, all one word, at checkout to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. That's bet $10 to win $150 plus 3 free months from The Athletic at BetMGM.com and using the promo code TheAthleticPod at checkout. New customer offer. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions.
Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada.
I want to make one point on Chris Flexen, which I know is very much a tangent from the subject of this podcast. But I will say in the Mets' defense that Flexen went to Korea in 2020, pitched more than most major leaguers did in 2020 for sure, because they had a much longer season there. Also seems to have pretty clearly learned something or made some adjustment while pitching overseas, which is something we've seen of players before, like Miles Michaelis, I believe, had that same situation, and a few other guys. There was if you look at the stats, there's a clear indication that a switch flipped for Chris Flexen, and I don't know how much I want to say so the Mets, that potential was clearly there, right? And why should the Doosan, I think it's the Doosan Bears, right? Why should they be able to unlock it and not the Mets? Yeah, that's a fair criticism, but that is a phenomenon we have seen before, and it does seem like that's what's going on and what happened with Chris Flexen. Back to the manager.
Wait! I just need to throw in. It's great you said about Doosan unlocking it. Unlock it, because you know who's one of Doosan's aces this season?
I don't.
is Walker Lockett,
yeah.
the former Met, who's got a sub-3 ERA for the Bears in 21 starts. So get ready for that next year.
Which makes me wonder, like, hey, who's the Doosan Bears pitching coach, and like, what's he doing next season? You know, like, I mean, and like that sounds. I guess that sounds glib, but like, I don't know. I would be open to absolutely anything if I were the Mets, and I guess there would be probably some hiccups with like translation, but someone communicated to Chris Flexen, and I'm not sure that he speaks Korean.
It seems like it's working out for them, so let's see what it can do over here.
I'm serious. I mean, you know, like I said, like you know, there are like, and it's like sort of that same idea. Instead of like having an outside eye, an objective eye, right? Like, I think back to like I mean, Aroldis Chapman was one case, and a bunch of like the early wave of Japanese pitchers all threw weighted balls to train. And at that time it was like unheard of, and it seemed like people said like they're gonna rip up their arms. It was not recommended, and now every guy throws weighted balls to train, right? Like they were the East was clear, and Cuba were clearly ahead of the U.S. in like that aspect of pitcher training, and so like it's certainly not inconceivable that this pitching coach in Doosan, and like this is not something I've thought about before this. Like I don't know who it is. I don't know anything about him, but like if you're the new president of baseball operations for the New York Mets under $10 billion owner Steve Cohen, like, and there's a guy out there, no matter where he is, or a woman, and wherever they are in the world, that can like get the best out of your players, like, go find him. You know, I don't know. Like I that sounds like pie in the sky a little bit, but like, why not?
I'm just looking at their roster, and Ariel Miranda, who also is an ex-Met, has an even better ERA this year. 2.33 in 24 starts. So whatever Doosan is doing is working.
There's also, I think that the Korean League, I don't know how it's been the last few years, but I know that they had like a few years where there were like wild swings in league-wide numbers because they were, I think, like adjusting the ball for a few years, and there was like 1 year where no one hit and 1 year where everyone hit. But Doosan, you know, 792 team OPS, so doesn't seem outrageous. Like that's a pretty good offensive environment, I would guess. And like you said, like Chris Flexen, Raul Alcantara, like there are a bunch of guys having really nice seasons, or who had really nice seasons there over the last couple of years. So I don't know. This is an idea I just came to, but I'm calling whoever is the pitching coach of the Doosan Bears if they put me in charge, and they should.
Back to Rojas.
And we're bringing back Walter Lockett. You mentioned Ron Washington. My sense, and I don't think this is true, but my guess would be that if the Mets hired Ron Washington to be their manager, and Ron Washington is a very popular guy around baseball, like you said in your column, he's known as like a wonderful infield coach, like he, you know, for teaching guys how to work with their hands, footwork, all those things. Like if you even if you see him anywhere in spring training, wherever he's coaching, like he'll always have infielders around him doing drills, and I've seen him explain some of them like in really interesting and straightforward terms, and help you understand how they make players better. Like he seems like a very good coach, and he's had some success as a manager. But my expectation would be if the Mets hired him, you'd get a lot of Mets fans disappointed simply because he's a guy who has been around the league and who isn't like, it's not sexy to hire Ron Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's sexy to hire, I guess, Carlos Beltran, right?
Yes,
That's what the Mets tried last time. I think when you look at the reason I mentioned Washington was because, you know, he was a finalist in San Diego a couple of years ago when they hired Jace Tingler. I think it was down to Tingler in Washington. And the Padres, I think, can say pretty clearly, now, we're recording this on Tuesday morning. I don't know if they've officially fired Tingler yet, but I believe everything was moving in that direction there, that was probably the wrong decision for them, that Washington would have made more sense for them. And I think, you know, for some of the same reasons that he could make more sense for the Mets as a team that could use someone who has won as a big league manager before. Ron Washington, despite like a miserable last season in Texas in 2014, has a record above 500. He won 90 plus games in 4 straight years. He won 87 plus games in 5 straight years and won 2 pennants with the Rangers. He's won at the big league level. He's experienced with, he works with current players. It's not like he's out of touch in any way, despite being a veteran manager, which I think is one of the concerns you would have with some other guys who haven't stayed in the game the way that Washington has. His in-game moves, if you remember thinking back to the 2011 World Series between him and Tony La Russa, it was not like a series of brilliant maneuvers by both sides. The World Series is often not a series of brilliant maneuvers by both sides. I just remember when, Dusty Baker was brought up as a candidate for the Mets job when they hired Beltran. Every fan was like, how could you hire Dusty Baker? He's the worst in-game manager you can have. And Dusty Baker has just won a division with his fifth different major league team. There's more to it than what happens between 7 and 10, as we've talked about a lot. It's harder to evaluate those other things without being in there. But I think those are the more important aspects of being a manager, especially now where a lot of what you do between 7 and 10 isn't necessarily dictated by you or your philosophy. So I thought, I don't know how realistic Washington individually is for the Mets, but I think that's the kind of person that makes a lot of sense for them. A guy, you're going to hear different assistant coaches from major league teams. Joe Espada was a guy that they had talked to a couple of years ago before they hired Beltran. That type of guy. Washington is in the same vein, except he has the major league experience of managing the Rangers for several years and being successful at it. So I think that's the reason he stands out, at least to me, very early in the process before we even know who's going to be doing the hiring.
Yeah, I guess I would like to just head off at the pass the notion that someone like Ron Washington, someone like Dusty Baker, who they're not going to hire because he's got a job and doing well at it, but like a guy like that couldn't succeed in contemporary baseball, and I know I brought this up I think last week. Terry Collins had as miserable a stint with the Angels as you could possibly imagine a manager having. Like there was a clubhouse mutiny, and if you talk to Angels fans, they said like this guy put himself in front of the team, which is like a cardinal sin for a manager. And then you think about Terry Collins' tenure with the Mets, and it's like that's just not that guy at all, right? Like you think about the Ass in the Jackpot video and like how much he cared about his players. Like there was just like so much like the weird sort of tenderness to him. And he said it himself, like he changed. And so I think you get a lot of like arguments based on cliches. Like people will just say, well, a leopard can't change its spots, and act like that's a good enough argument for like why a guy should or shouldn't be the Mets manager. And that's not true of human beings, right? Like even if you're in your 60s or 70s, like you could still be learning and adjusting and keeping yourself viable in baseball. It's probably harder to do. You need to have an open mind, but these people are in the top, 0.01% of people in their profession. And so there's got to be a reason Ron Washington's still around and still a managerial candidate.
Right. And has connected with players in Atlanta, certainly. I think our David O'Brien, who covers the Braves for The Athletic, wrote a long thing with Washington in the last week that shows the way, he's got a fantastic way of putting things at times, when he talked about kind of the way the Mets and Phillies let the Braves left them stick around in the division and then blow by them in the month of August. But the connection that he still has with his infielders, and you're right, like, I was in Atlanta over the weekend, and every day before, while even before the Braves take batting practice or don't take batting practice, depending on the day, Washington is out there playing pepper basically with each different infielder on his knees, hitting them quick ground balls. And that, look, Gary DiSarcina does that a lot with the Mets as well. Mm-hmm. But, you see him doing all of the things that a coach needs to be doing. There doesn't seem to be a huge ego there, I think. So he just stands out early to me, but I'm sure that we're going to hear a lot of different candidates. I'm sure he's going to be a candidate elsewhere as well this offseason, because I think, You look at some of the reasons teams with talent have not succeeded, and a lot of it can be like a communications issue, a lack of experience issue, a front office and manager either being too tight or not tight at all issue. These are all different ways of talking about the Padres. And teams maybe you see teams go in a different direction from what they've done in the last couple of years in hiring younger, less experienced people.
Ready to take a trip? Hear about all the must-see places with Thrillist's new series, Get Out of Town, brought to you by the City Advantage Platinum Select Card. Go from the East Coast to the West and everywhere in between, like the best spot to grab a drink on the San Antonio Riverwalk. There's a million reasons to get out of town. The only hard part is choosing where to go first. Listen to Get Out of Town with Thrillist everywhere you get podcasts. Brought to you by the City Advantage Platinum Select Card.
John Heyman tweeted earlier this week, Mets will soon contact Theo Epstein regarding their baseball president job and plan to request permission to interview Billy Beane and David Stearns after their clubs are out. At the time, he said the A's are done soon Sunday and pointed out the Brewers may linger for a while. So Heyman wrote, Theo could be up first as Mets try for a proven star. These are all names we've talked about before. I don't know how and not to undercut John's reporting, just of course they're going to contact Theo Epstein, right?
Yeah, I mean that was not a surprise, I think, to anyone that they're at least going to chat with him. I've said this really since Theo left the Cubs last year. I don't think it's happening here.
Why? Why would you do that if you're Theo Epstein?
Right, exactly. I thought you were going in the other direction with your exasperation.
I am exasperated. I would love him to be the Mets president, but if I'm Theo Epstein, I'm not going to touch him with like a 30-foot pole.
Yeah, you've done it with the Red Sox. You've done it with the Cubs. Doing it with the Mets is not as romantic as winning a World Series with those other franchises. And I think what he would want is people have said. Sorry, I have not done this reporting myself, but people have said what he's looking for is essentially what Derek Jeter has in Miami, which is like you are part of ownership and you are running the team from that level. And that position, the Mets don't have it yet, and Steve Cohen is not going to create that position because Steve Cohen takes a more active interest in how this team operates than Bruce Sherman in Miami, who is the guy the control person there. So if you're Theo Epstein, what you want doesn't exist exactly the way you want it in Queens. So I think he's got the freedom to decide, if and when he wants to rejoin a team. I don't think the conditions for that exist with the Mets. Beane and Stearns are the other two big names, and Beane did not close off speculation, certainly, yesterday in Oakland when he said that he takes it as a compliment that people are interested in the staff and that he doesn't respond to stories like this. He hasn't followed the news.
Sure.
And which is all interesting to see.
He's caught up in that soccer. He's caught up in Premier League soccer again, I guess.
Yeah, but he didn't say no. So I think there might be a little bit more interest from Beane. I don't know that it means like he wants the job, but I think there might be more of a like when he if and when he talks to the Mets, he would think about he'd be intrigued by what they have to offer, and he'd contemplate it probably on a deeper level than Epstein at this point.
Yeah. On that, regarding the request for permission thing, and I think we've discussed this at pretty great length, but like Sandy Alderson's got Billy Beane's phone number, right? Like, do you really need? I don't know. Can you not have like some sort of? Is it tampering to have like just to see like, hey, what's up, man? How you love in Oakland? Like, what's going on with your job there? How do you not say like, are you interested? Just like, hey, you ever think about maybe making a change?
Sandy Alderson is just sending him pictures of foliage and how nice it is in New York this time of year. And wouldn't it be wonderful to be driving to a postseason game in Queens this afternoon, right? I am not sure exactly how the tampering rules work. I am sure that executives are allowed to have conversations with one another.
Well, they're friends, right? They're friends.
Yeah. I mean, Beane has talked about idolizing Sandy Alderson in the past, not just like as a mentor, but as an idol. So yeah, they get along, and Alderson obviously in 2019, in 2020, maybe it was 19 and 20, spent time in the A's front office again, kind of as an advisor with Billy Beane. So yeah, like I am sure that, if Billy Beane really didn't want this job, that Sandy Alderson would know by now. So I think there is, I don't know how to characterize the interest, but I think there is some interest on his part.
Yeah, and on Beane, like I was suggesting on Epstein, like there's, and like I said before, Beane, it's like this is a solid opportunity to tarnish your reputation. And for Epstein, I think that's like an extreme case. Like if you're Theo Epstein, like you've been in charge of 2 teams and you ended both of their legendary World Series curses, right? Like, I don't understand. I don't know how you ever go near running a baseball team again, because you need to be, he's obviously smart. He must know how unlikely any team president is to pilot a team to winning the World Series. Like, unless he's so arrogant as to think like he is significantly better at this than every one of these guys who like came up under him and are now running other franchises, then if I'm Theo Epstein, it's like, you know what? Like, I'm good with the commissioner's office doing something else. I want people to think about me every time a team needs a president for the rest of my life, but I'm never going to do it.
The kind of Bill Cowher NFL coach route.
Yeah.
And if Epstein had just taken the Costanza departure at like the end of 2016, it was just like, that's it, I'm out, I've done it.
Harper Lee, right?
That his legacy might be even stronger at this point. So yeah, I don't. I think Mets fans often, or there's at least a section of Mets fans who view the Mets as being in the same vein as the Red Sox and Cubs. And
true.
They're not, which is good because it means that their title drought is 50 years shorter than Boston's was, and even another 22 years on top of that for Chicago, and for Epstein, Boston was the hometown team, so that had obviously even greater appeal for him at that point. So I guess there's a chance that he has interest in that Steve Cohen is able to sell him on the idea or just pay him enough to make him interested. You can give him like John Gruden did not seem all that interested in returning to the NFL to coach, and then they gave him $100 million, right? And he became more interested. Maybe there's that possibility, although that's not necessarily the guy you want to hire, is the guy who's doing it for the paycheck. The Knicks know that with like Phil Jackson, right? So it'll be an interesting dynamic to see how it works out, but I still think that Epstein is less likely than most of the others.
We have a question related to this topic. It comes from Doug Berman, who's asked us a few questions in the past, always smart questions. I love this one. He says, I was listening to your discussion of front office poaching etiquette last week, that other clubs are normally given permission to speak to an employee about a job if they're offering a promotion, a boost in pay and title. And as you pointed out, this led to title inflation. He said, what if the Mets decide not to hire a president of baseball operations first, but a team president who manages a president of baseball operations, which would be our new title for general manager? Sandy Alderson becomes executive VP for business and operations, since presumably he doesn't care about things as mundane as titles anymore. Then you say, hello, Tampa Bay. We'd like to talk to Mr. Neander about a promotion to team president. It looks like he's a lowly president of baseball operations now. Hello, Mr. Milwaukee. We're wondering if Mr. Stearns might like to move his career along with a step up to a team president position. And as he points out, like, president of baseball operations is a new thing that teams invented to do exactly this. Like, why not keep going? And like, I would say push it even further, like make up new titles, like you are the baseball czar and you are in charge of everything and there's no title above this. We are just going to call you, as long as you work for our team, we're just calling you the baseball god. And that's it. Like, there's no better title. We will never give anyone ever permission to talk to you ever, because we've given you the top title.
Emperor of baseball operations.
Baseball.
You get to decide everything. It's an interesting question. I was trying to look up what the Blue Jays and Mark Shapiro, Mark Shapiro. Because he had been Cleveland's, I think, team president, might have been president of baseball ops, and then he got team president and CEO of of Toronto when they were hiring for more of a business side of things. I think it'd be difficult for the Mets I don't know exactly how you carve out that position, especially because the position that Doug is describing is literally the one that Sandy Alderson already has the title for. You would have to shift there. I think the more interesting question would be like, what does adding potential ownership stakes do to the calculus? Does that count as a promotion if you're willing to offer that kind of equity in the franchise? Because Epstein has talked about wanting that moving forward, to have a stake in ownership, not just decision-making wise, but financially. Billy Beane already has that in Oakland. So again, it wouldn't be a promotion for him, but you would think that he might want to match that in a move to New York. Stearns doesn't have that in Milwaukee. I think if it would probably be considered tampering if through back channels you let him know that would be a possibility in New York, if he wanted to kind of nudge his way out of Milwaukee. So it is strange. Andrew Baggerly at The Athletic wrote about this about a month ago now in September with Farhan Zaidi and the Giants, that the way that Major League Baseball does it with all of these, like, none of these titles are standardized really across the sport. You have a lot of general managers who are executive vice president or senior vice president and general manager. Like Brian Cashman, for instance, is not a president of baseball ops. He's I think a senior vice president and general manager. The Mets could conceivably offer him a promotion and talk to him that way. Chaim Bloom in Boston is not a president of baseball ops. He's the chief baseball officer. He's a CBO, not a PBO.
See, but that's a made up title, right? That's Doug's point. Like, that's not a job. Like, no one has that job at any other company, right? Like, there's no, like, Campbell's Soup doesn't have a chief baseball officer.
Chief soup officer.
Right.
Whereas like the NFL, everything is, standardized across franchises. So every team has the same kind of hierarchy. It's actually more complex when you get below the general manager level and you start to get into assistant general managers. And I'm trying to remember what the title was for Adam Guttridge when he was with the Mets. He was one of Brody Van Wagenen's like number two people right behind him. But it was like director of advancement or something, and assistant general manager. They put different titles on what you're heading up below the general manager level. It's probably time, considering we've got teams trying to talk to other people from other organizations as frequently as they do, to make it more standardized across the sport. I think that'd make it easier for everyone involved to know what's promotion and what's not. It'd be interesting to see how the Mets would try to finagle their way around that, especially with someone like Stearns. Neander, I think you can't even really consider. He just signed a 5-year extension like 3 weeks ago. So he's not going to leave Tampa. He doesn't want to leave Tampa, is my understanding. But
he could be emperor of baseball. He could be emperor of baseball.
If he wanted to leave Tampa for the Mets, he wouldn't have signed that deal. Like he could have just left, no problem, this winter. So they could maybe try. I think the rest of the league would be onto it and would not like it. I think.
But someone's going to do it. Someone's going to do it, right? Like that. And Doug sort of made that point in a PS. Like, hopefully, no other executive listened to it. I mean, everybody wants a competitive advantage. If that's the move you got to make to hire someone, like, someone's going to do that. And why can't it for once be the Mets?
Like the president of baseball operations kind of evolved organically. I don't know who the first one to have that title was. I feel like Dave Dombrowski has had it at most of his stops. I think going back to Detroit, he's had it at least.
I thought Shapiro
existed before that.
I thought Shapiro was pretty early with that too, right? When they like promoted him out of the GM spot.
Right, and that was about a decade ago. I think it was. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page because I was looking him up earlier. That was at the end of 2010.
Yeah,
I do think it existed a little bit before then. But I don't know for sure. That's a harder. I tried looking that up recently. It was a harder thing to track down than I like. So yeah, I mean, someone's going to try it at some point. I don't know what you like. We joke about emperor and king of baseball operations. Like, I don't know how you come across that. Like how you go about that. And I think the Mets would be. It would be transparent enough of an undertaking that the ownership of other teams who might be skeptical of Steve Cohen to begin with would do their very best to prevent it from happening.
Well, and Steve Cohen certainly doesn't seem like a guy to bend the rules to his advantage. We will be back to talk about all of this stuff, which I assume will still be very much in the air next week while the postseason is ongoing and the Mets are not.
Yes, and we'll have a lot of different offseason topics to tackle over the next couple of weeks. I laid out a bunch of them on the website this week with this winter in Mets, all the decisions they've got to make. But the free agent stuff and all that is going to, obviously that waits till after the season. But so much of the decision making, we still don't know who's making the decisions, and that's the most important hire. And I've said it might be as important a hire as the Mets have made in their history. So that's the focus for them right now.
It is undoubtedly a big offseason for the Mets, and we will be around to talk about it for sure. Tim, peace out.
Adios.
The presenting sponsor of today's show is Topps.com and Topps Project 70. Topps is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its very first baseball card design with a new program that pushes boundaries while also paying homage to their heritage. Founded in 1938 as a chewing gum company, Topps released their first baseball card set in 1951. Now, 7 decades later, Topps has teamed up with 51 artists and creatives from around the globe to revisit and reimagine 70 years of Topps' most iconic baseball card designs through a year-long program called Project 70. Each artist will select their own MLB players and Topps designs from any year to craft a unique story. Ever wanted to know what Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle would look like in a 1980s Topps design? Or how about Fernando Tatis Jr. in the 1950s? Now you can. 3 new cards launch daily all year long on Topps.com and are only available for 70 hours before they're gone for good. While you're there, on the lookout for special cards, each card drop includes rainbow foil editions, numbered 1 to 70, randomly inserted into each card's print run, as well as 1-of-1 gold frame edition given to a lucky purchaser. Exclusive artist-proof editions numbered to 51, featuring a silver frame, are also available for purchase for every single card. But hurry, as those sell out shortly after each card is launched. So look, head to Topps.com to learn more about Project 70 and to check out which cards are live right now.